It's my immense delight to invite the speaker of the keynote session, Professor Dr. Mamun Habib. Professor Dr. Mamun Habib is a professor at School of Business, Independent University, Bangladesh. In addition, Dr. Habib is the visiting scientist of University of Texas, Arlington, United States. Prior to that, he was the associate professor at BRAC Business School, BRAC University located at Bangladesh, Asia Graduate School of Business at Unitar International University, Malaysia, Department of Operations Research or Decision Sciences, University Uttara, Malaysia, and Department of Operations Management, American International University, Bangladesh. He has more than 18 years of experience in the field of teaching, as well as in training, workshops, consultancy, and research. At present, he is supervising some PhD students located locally as well as international too. As a researcher, Dr. Habib published more than 140 research papers which include conference proceedings, journal articles, book chapters, and books too. He serves as editor-in-chief, lead guest editor, editorial board member, reviewer of more than 20 journals, particularly Elsevier Scopus and Thomson Reuters and Web of Sciences indexed journals too. Also, he delivers lectures as keynote speaker at many international conferences, when counted have been more than 50. His core research areas are supply chain management, production and operations management, operations research, research methodology. Finally, Dr. Mamun Habib is an active member of different professional organizations, including IEEE as a senior member, IEOM as a president of SCM Technical Division, IETI as a senior member and board of directors, IRED as a fellow, GRDS as a vice president, and many more like IEB, AIMS, INFOMS, and probably just to name a few. At this moment, having a person with such a great profile is really a blessing to GWEST 2020. So without any delay, let me welcome Professor Mamun Habib to share his presentation on this GWEST 2020 with us. Thank you.
Welcome to our global webinar on engineering, science, and technology. I'm honored to deliver the keynote speech on COVID-19 and supply chain disruption. Before going to start the presentation, I'd like to give the special thanks to organizer, Baba Institute of Technology and Sciences, WITS, Visakhapatnam, India, as well as the Institute for Engineering Research and Publication, IFERP, India. Today, we are facing the lockdown situation all over the world. Some of the countries, they are trying to remove the lockdown, but still most of the countries, we are facing the COVID-19 pandemic impact. On this stage, today, I'd like to deliver the lecture on COVID-19 effect and supply chain disruption. Before going to start this one, nowadays, when the supply chain professional, they are getting their query from everyone that what happened to our supply chain due to COVID-19. In fact, centralized production, just in time, manufacturing, overall rigidity could be to blame. In the midst of the coronavirus disruptions, one thing has become particularly clear. The way our supply chain was designed earlier, it was vulnerable to a pandemic. Take a look at the Apple top 10 suppliers. More than 2 to 3 are located in Asia. Those are leaving the company exposed to COVID-19 induced factory shutdowns. The official term for this kind of concentrated manufacturing is centralized production. It's a very common term, which basically means businesses all over the world for more than just Apple had all their eggs in one basket. So this type of question is coming nowadays. What is the impact of COVID-19? Basically, this is the, before going to start these queries, I'd like to start this one, that what is the supply chain? So that the audiences, if you are not aware about the supply chain, you can get some idea. Basically, when you think of the supply chain, you have to understand this is one chain that will start from the supplier and that will finish the customer end. And now, when you are talking about this one, this is one chain connectivity between the supplier and customer. So definitely three entities you have to think: the raw materials, finished product, raw material, the supplier end, finished product in the customer end. Flow of goods, if it's the manufacturing industry. Flow of service, if it is service industry. Definitely flow of information and flow of fund must be there. So when you think the supply chain disaster, before that you have to understand the basic supply chain. So that's why when you think any kind of basic supply chain, whatever the RMG industry, whatever the textile industry, whatever the like the toy industry, vegetable industry, anywhere, you have to think the three basic entities. I just remind you again: raw material, finished product, supplier and customer, flow of goods, flow of information, flow of fund. So basically, this is the basic supply chain for the manufacturing industry. Supplier, what I said earlier, the supplier and customer must be there. Raw materials will come up from the supplier end, and after the processing, finished product deal with the customer end. So what I said, that flow of goods must be there, flow of information must be there. Now come to the next one, that manufacturing, distributor, retailer. These three entities, it depends. You know that if it's like the very small manufacturing industry, only manufacturer is enough. So factory must be there. And then a customer, they can come to the factory and they can buy and they can collect the product from there. But if you think the medium type of the production organization, definitely we need the like on retailer. So that after the production, we'll send the product to the like the retailer, and customer, they will come to the retailer and they'll collect the product from there. If it is a large organization, large manufacturing industry, then you have to think supplier, manufacturer, distributor, retailer, and the customer. You know why I'm talking about this on basic supply chain for manufacturing industry, so that at least we can get some idea then how the disruption due to the COVID-19 is coming to the like supply chain. If you think about the like definition of supply chain, I would say that very easily, and I already mentioned the sequence of organizations. So when you think of sequence of organization, so it means that you have to think their facilities, function, activities that are involved in producing and delivering the product or service. So product from manufacturing industry and service for the service industry. What type of facilities are involved then? What type of functional activities are involved? We'll discuss in the next two slides. If you ask that what type of facilities, then definitely the warehouse is one kind of facilities. Today, when we discuss the disruption, I think we again come to this one. Warehouse or inventory, where you have to keep the product. So now this question is coming, the buffer inventory is very important. Factories, definitely the production must be there. Processing center is a part of the production center. A distribution center, we need the distribution channel, how we can distribute. If you think about the like Tesco or Walmart, then you can understand how this is the chain chain super shop. Well, how they are continuing this their business in the Walmart and Tesco. These are distribution channels, so very important distribution centers. Retail outlets, lots of retail outlets. If you go to the like the any country like Malaysia, Thailand, or even the like the Asian or European country, you can see lots of Tesco. So there are lots of outlets. Some outlets very small, some outlets very large. So this is the one kind of facility you have to think when you design the supply chain. Definitely office, even whatever say the distribution center, outlet, all of the office. So this is the basic facility you have to need when you think any supply chain, so that we can understand that what kind of disruption is coming to us. And now come to the like functional activities. Basically, if you think the functional activities, this is very important forecasting, like supply and demand. You know what you mentioned earlier, supplier and customer. So normally you come with the supplier, and after the processing finish for deal with the customer. Now come to the point that how much products do you need? So we need this forecast. This forecast will come up on the like the previous history, like previous years your demand. So you can check the demand and based on the forecast on the next year. So based on the forecasting, based on the demand forecasting, you have to think about your supplier. Even the raw material supply is also based on the forecasting. So this is very important function activities. You know that when you think of the supply chain, this question is very common. But you have the production based on the previous years of forecasting you produce. Unfortunately, this COVID-19 has been come up. So then the question is there, you have lots of products already available, but you cannot do anything. So you cannot say the forecasting is wrong, but the situation is different. That's why even if forecasting collapsed, so that's why you call it supply chain disruption. Purchasing is very important. Procurement, basically, this is the main thing is that between the supplier and the factory manufacturing. Basically, here they are working on the procurement. They are working on the suppose the contract and negotiation. If there is a conflict, how they'll manage it. Everything is a part of this purchasing, and definitely the procurement is one of the very important. Sourcing is very important at this side. So when you talk about the purchasing, you have to think the procurement, sourcing, something like that. Inventory management, I think we already mentioned warehouse. So warehouse management, inventory management, almost similar. Information management, definitely we need the proper information. Nowadays, we are working on this on online based. Everything is online based. Even our education program is online based. Even there are organizations going on, the factories, production is going on based on the information, and all of the virtual information. So information management. Basically, when you talk about the information management, we have to think of the MIS, management information system, how we can integrate it system. So it's very important thing is what I said, the integrated information. I believe after the COVID-19, any kind of industry, any kind of manufacturing service industry, any kind of organization, they have to think how they will put the virtual information system, how they'll manage the system, even for the remote area. So they can manage it by the based on the software or based on the just username password in the system. Another functionality is the quality assurance. Definitely is very important, and due to the COVID-19, we also facing this problem, deterioration in the quality. You know that very important thing is that quality assurance. Even nowadays, when you are producing this, even the PPE, but you have to ensure the quality of PPE. You are producing that, suppose even the mask, so you have to think that quality mask. So, you know that N95 mask, there's lots of question of the N95 mask. Some of the organizations, some of the factory they produce, but it's not the quality. So that question is that quality is a part of that one. And when you ensure the quality, you have to understand how you're managing this quality within the supply chain. So when there is there any kind of disruption, definitely the quality deterioration will be there. Scheduling, online delivery. You know that is very interesting due to the COVID-19. There are lots of disruption in the transportation, human resource disruption. So even on-time delivery could not be happening. So this is very important scheduling. Production and delivery. I again remind you the on-time delivery, on-time production. That is very challenging. That is the most important function actually in the whole supply chain. Customer service definitely is very important. Even any circumstances, you have to ensure. Basically, more or less, this kind of function activities are very common in supply chain: forecasting, purchasing, procurement, inventory, warehouse management, quality assurance, something like that. So first of all, I like to start by this one that at least you can get the basic idea of supply chain. I believe some of the participants in this webinar, they don't have enough idea of supply chain. At least they can get some idea that what we are talking about this one. So when you go to the in details discussion on the supply chain disruption due to the COVID-19, you can understand what is we are going to discuss. First of all, look on the question, the disruption. Basically, disruption gradually being felt everywhere in the supply chain, from ports to factories. I think you know the factory already. Storehouses, so we can call it warehouse or inventory, and delivery channel, distribution channel. With the passing every single day during the worldwide, countrywide shutdown imposed to curb the spread of the COVID-19. So you understand, everywhere we are facing this one. Disruption gradually is we are observing, we are noticing. Disruptions are available in the transportation, warehouses, supply raw materials, procurement, distribution channel, and so on. I think I give some idea in the last few slides. Even the disruption is also evident in the rural farm level where people are not getting the fair price of their produce. Yeah, it's happening. You know that if you think the supply chain drivers, the pricing, supply chain, if you think like the supply chain drivers pricing, But nowadays, do you think that we can ensure the pricing properly? Some of the product price is very high, some of the product price is very low. Even the people they don't want to buy. So this is another issue. Even I remember that suddenly during the COVID-19 initial stage, like March and April, the prices of the eggs have drastically reduced, and nobody is taking the milk. You just think that the demand of milk is very high, but nobody wants to buy the milk. So there's a disruption in the supply chain. Whole supply chain we noticed. Basically, this is one kind of supply chain in shambles and disorder. You can see. You know that basically supply chain runs on 4 pillars. We call it planning, sourcing, making, and delivery. So if you look very carefully, due to the COVID-19 supply chain disruptions, like planning is moderate, good, it's okay. But unfortunately, the sourcing, making, and delivery is worst and bad. This is the one example. Basically, these examples come from our country, Bangladesh, based on the Chittagong port. This is one of the famous port in our country as well as all over the world. If you look very carefully, actually the Chittagong port of Bangladesh have become to a standstill as the amount of import containers has exceeded the port storage capacity due to slow delivery of goods, I mean, due to the shutdown. You know that I just give the example of this one. Look very carefully here. I already noticed here that demand for sugar, lentil and edible oil, flour, etc. You know that during our April and May, there was a Ramadan of our Muslim in subcontinent like the Bangladesh, Pakistan, even the Indian people. So the demand was very high, 20 to 30% increase. And demand for the definitely that we need the truck to transportation, 20% during that time. Unfortunately, Chittagong port storage capacity was less than that one. And there were about the almost 49,000 1920 equivalent units. Well, the volume of the import containers reached 49,468. You understand? And not only that, 11 vessels and jetties were waiting for the offloading of goods. And then not only that, another 30 container vessels at outer anchorage for purchasing into the port. Look very carefully what happened. And this is the very common scenario we noticed in Bangladesh, not in Bangladesh, anywhere in the world, they face the same problem. Activity in Chittagong port of Bangladesh that handles around 80% external trade of the country, which have become to a standstill. So what I mentioned earlier, even the loading the consumer goods, companies say that goods are stuck at ports, factory, in storehouses. Look, goods are stuck at the port, so we cannot bring the product from the port to the factory. In factory, they have a product. In the storehouse, they have a product. So far, they are growing with the raw materials. They have been stocks, but there will be problems in the days to come if the total supply chain system from what I said earlier, planning to sourcing, making, delivery doesn't improve. So what we mentioned that the 4 supply chain pillars, like even planning, sourcing, making, delivery, is not working properly. So this is the supply chain disruption. You know that there is one general manager of very largest city group, one of the largest commodity conglomerates in our country. And so they're facing this disruption in 3 areas, like Chittagong port in Bangladesh, and production in factories and transportation. Because when I give the scenario of the Chittagong port, what is happening in transportation, production factory, we need the human resource. Those will involve for the factory production. Unfortunately, couldn't get it. If the workers, you can get the workers, then the next question that we have to maintain the health care properly, systematic health care, and according to the WHO guidelines. So we need the mask, we need the gloves, we need if more production like PPE or something like that. And even if anybody is affected in the COVID-19, you can understand what is happening in the factory. So there are lots of factories, they face the problem during the production. And finally, the transportation. Suppose they produced, they think that they can send this product to the next retailer, but there's a shutdown. And some of the places were difficult. Even some of the places, the people, they did the local shutdown. So there are lots of barricade, there are lots of barriers they cannot go from this type of place. So that general manager, he mentioned the ships loaded with goods, unfortunately, they are stuck at the ports, and they are not getting the enough people to run the production. And finally, the drive trucks to carry the commodities is unfortunately they cannot do that. So what you mentioned, this is the common phenomena. We are facing supply chain disruption in the transportation, production, as well as the port. The demand for some commodities, such as we already mentioned. What you mentioned that the trucks loaded with these goods should now be busy carrying them to all corners of the country. So if you look this kind of production factories, they're good production if they could manage the human resources. But then the next things come up. Then they need the transportation. Even they couldn't get the proper carrier. That how they will transfer the product from the factory to the next retailer. On the other hand, the large business conglomerates in our country, like Magna Group of Industries, City Group, Abul Khair Group, Akis Group, Group, they're facing disruption in the supply chain due to the shutdown, due to the COVID-19. And now the next phenomenon is that more resilience in supply chains. What is said the more resilience in the supply chain? There are now a consensus that more resilient supply chains will be needed in the wake of the extreme uncertainty. We don't know what will happen after 2 months. We don't know what will happen after 3 months. In our country, our garments industry, the organization, the BGMEA, they mentioned there is a possibility that next month the workers around the 20 to 30% workers could be fired. If you look very carefully nowadays, USA, recently you notice that about 20 to 30% they are unemployed. So you just think is increasing 20 to 30% people that are unemployed. So now comes the question: for some, this involves building up stock piles and the buffer inventory to provide more given the system. But where doesn't comes at greater cost? You are thinking you'll keep the inventory for a long time, but in this case, that it will keep the cost in the warehouse. This is what just-in-time delivery is aimed to resolve, but it's not possible just-in-time delivery at this moment due to supply chain disruption. So what is it that more resilience in supply chains? And this is another phenomena due to the COVID-19 supply chain disruption. If you look very carefully, this one, the manufacturing impact. Basically, manufacturing companies have been buffeted into two waves. One, the global supply chain disruption. I think I already discussed supply chain disruption. And another is that internal operational regional disruption. Look, global supply chain disruption, internal operational and regional disruptions. Look, I think you already understand that supply chain. This is a raw material supplier, entire supplier. This is a modular component supplier, system integrator. This is the original equipment manufacturer. This is a distribution or retailer end. So if you look very carefully here, suppose here, just one example, critical raw materials with limited global availability are affected, leading to long period of capacity storage. Same. If you come to here, you can see this one, entire supplier of critical companies affected and cannot wrap up production fast now. It's not possible to wrap up the production. We need the human resource, we need the machine. Not only this, it's risky nowadays. Even the owner of the industry, they're also facing this problem. They're scared that if any kind of work they have the COVID-19, and then what will happen to the other workers? So it's better to go for shutdown. It's better to go to the slow production. If you look very carefully here, if you see this one, supplier of components or modules suffers from undetected broken supply chain on tier level. Even sometimes it's unprecedented supply chain disruption. It is not possible to predict. Even the plants outside of affected areas are impacted by shortage of few crucial parts and have to completely shut down. What I said earlier. Highly volatile demand swings further complicate sales and operating plan. So even if you produce, but how you can think of the sale, how you can do the operating plan, it's difficult. What you said here, I just go back to that point. What you said, the supply chain disruptions available in the manufacturing industry based on the global supply chain disruption and internal operational regional disruption. So two types of disruptions: the regional and there is the global as well. Disrupted global supply chain. The spread of the COVID-19 has already disrupted supply chain globally, we already mentioned, but this is some of the several ways it's happening. Weakening the demand for some companies. Some companies remain very weak. On the other hand, skyrocketing in the demand for selected companies. You know, the lots of industries that are going to close, but even some of the industries, they're getting the very good business. IT related, any kind of organization, they're getting good business. If you ask me, the textile industry, like ready-made RMG, ready-made garments industry, they're facing the problem, weaken the demand. Lots of buyers, they already stopped their order or something like that. But on the other hand, Microsoft, they did a very good business. Now the people, they're using that the Microsoft team everywhere. You see, that is, it is possible. Microsoft, they're doing Google Meet. We are using Google Meet. Very easy to use. Creating uncertainty in opting the raw materials. I think I already mentioned earlier that if you think that like a procurement side, sourcing the most important thing. And nowadays, if you think that earlier you choose only one supplier, nowadays it's risky. Supply due to supply disruption. So we don't know the uncertainty of the supplier. So it's better to think that the more suppliers. I think you'll discover this in later on. Impacting the ability to ship and receive the products on time due to the shortage and logistic bottlenecks. I think we already mentioned this one. It's very difficult nowadays due to the bottleneck operation, due to the shortage of transportation, logistic bottlenecks as well. And ensuring the workforce capacity to assemble and ship products. I think we already mentioned this one, workforce, human resource. It is another critical thinking. So this, it happens that now it is human resource capacity is very difficult in order to assemble or ship the products. And now come to the like technology supply chain disruption. You know that recently that the Fortune 1000, based on Fortune 1000, they mentioned 90% of that Fortune 1000. COVID-19 may accelerate the company's search for ways to reduce supply risk and the likelihood for future disruption. So what is it that 90% of the Fortune 1000, including the many technology companies, have already suffered supply disruption. I just give the two examples so that just we can think. You see that you know that Apple is very popular, so now we can give the example of Apple. Wistron Corporation is one of the Apple suppliers. So, which told analysts during a recent earnings call that half of its capacity could be located outside China by the 2020-21 due to the COVID-19. And the company is now eyeing India, Vietnam, and Mexico. They're planning to move from China to India, Vietnam, and Mexico. Another one is the Samsung. This is their home country, South Korea. Previously diversified in its smartphone production to Vietnam and India, while maintaining components from China. Yet the pandemic was brought enough to still disrupt Samsung smartphone production, according to the Wall Street Journal. So I just give the two examples, one from the like supplier of the Apple, Wistron, and the Samsung, so to understand the technological supply disruption due to the COVID-19. Now, I mean, before finishing, I like to give some suggestion that could be applicable, especially the technology supply disruption, short term and medium and long term consideration. Let us start in this way that short term action consideration scenarios. We have to understand the financial and operational impact across the multiple scenarios. Financial and operational impact across the multiple scenarios. Look carefully the Walmart, Tesco. Do you remember that during the COVID-19 in USA, the Tesco, they recruited lots of human resource for part-time basis. You see, because now they're planning for the home delivery service rather than the customer will come to the like Tesco. Same thing, Walmart they're doing. Now they recruit lots of human resource. Because the demand of the Tesco Walmart is a superstore, it could not be reduced. The secondly, you have to think supply demand balance. I think you remember one thing what we discussed earlier, forecasting. If there is a relation of the supply and demand forecasting. Focus on balancing supply and demand, the building of buffer stock, as they say. Maybe buffer stock, buffer inventory. But if you think the buffer stock or buffer inventory, then the next thing you have to understand, you have to remember there's one that cost of inventory, cost of the warehousing for the buffer stock. So we have to think supply and demand balance. It is better to sell the product even at the discounted price, or you have to keep the product for the next time, next demand. This is something you have to think supply and demand balance. Supplier financial health is very important. You have to think that the financial health of the supplier. Evaluate the financial health of your key suppliers to assess the potential impact to your supply chain. Financial health. And what I said that even some of the organization, they could not give the salary even for the 1 month during the COVID-19, as there is no production. But some of the company, even there is no production, they are giving the salary even then 2 or 3 months, they can continue. That is something we call it financial health. So evaluate the financial health of your key suppliers, whether they are capable to cope up with this kind of scenario due to the COVID-19. If you think that no, not possible, then you have to choose the multiple suppliers. Or what is the next solution that multiple suppliers? So this is short-term action consideration we can do for the technology supply chain disruption scenario. You have to see the scenarios: financial, operational scenario, supply and demand balance, and finally supply and financial health. Now come to the next one, that these are other suggestions for the mid to long-term consideration due to the technology supply chain disruption. Micro supply chains, supply diversification, supply chain strategy. So let me share the few idea with you. Micro supply chain, build agility and speed into your supply chain by creating the micro supply chain. Finite, decentralized, as well mini operating models with flexible supplier contracts and relationship with manufacturer closer to the point of purchase. You see, look very carefully to what you call. We are talking about the decentralized, finite, mini operating models, small, flexible supplier, not the rigid supplier. You have to take the product from me all the time. So you have to do the contract in that way. And relation with the manufacturing, the factory, closer to the point of purchase. So you like to buy the raw material from this place. So you have to think what will be your factory. You are buying the raw material from the Chittagong or Bound. Your factory in the India is okay, very close, Calcutta. If your factory in the Chennai is very far. This is the way you have to think. So how you can reduce the transportation. Explore the strategies to buy where you make, buy where you make where you sell. And now, after the project, where you market, so where you can sell it. So you need the potential markets. So you have to check this one. So I would say that you have to see the whole supply chain, micro supply chain. You have to understand that it is not like that you have to think the raw material supplier. You have to think that your manufacturer means your factory. Then you have to think the market, the retailer, the customers, the potential market. You have to think. Secondly, what I said, the supply diversification. Basically, you have to assess the opportunity to diversify the supplier base, identify the geographically diverse suppliers to on board in the event of emergency. Consideration should be given to dual sourcing for critical components. Let me explain something. You see, I noticed that some of the export organizations, export factories, export production line, they totally disrupted during the COVID-19. All kind of vessels, all kind of ship cancelled. So they cannot do any kind of export. On the other hand, if you do doing the business in the local market, so at least you can get some path. So that's why I said that when you design about your supply diversification, you have to think, okay, these are key suppliers, but we have the other suppliers. So suddenly the key supplier, you cannot get the raw material from the key supplier, but you have alternate options so that you can continue the supply chain. So that is something you have called it supply diversification. And finally, the supplier strategies. Move away from an adversarial short-term approach toward a long-term strategy of driving value. You should not think on the short-term approach, you think the long-term. So not only long-term strategy, you target adding the values. So long-term strategy of driving value. Periodically test, regular basis you have to check. And revise your strategy to account for organizational growth as well as the environmental change. environmental is very important. You have to see. Recently, you know that now that if you think the healthcare supply chain, the most of the pharmaceuticals, they are involved to produce the vaccination for the COVID-19. So look very carefully. They could not do this one, but they are working on that because their main target is the long term. You understand, if any pharmaceutical industry, when they're successful to produce that vaccination for the COVID-19, they have a huge market in the world. So their target is that one, and not only the market, long-term strategy as well as the driving value. The world will remember that. People will remember that. So that is something strategy you have to do. This one, what kind of vaccination you can produce based on the healthcare supply chain. So basically, that's all from my discussion on the COVID-19 and supply chain disruption. I before finish, I'd like to give the special thanks to the organizer again, especially Professor Gopinath of the Baba Institute, and as well as that Sri Lakhi, the secretary of the Baba Institute, and definitely the Siddhartha from the IFERP for organizing this kind of global webinar, so that we can share our lecture with the mass group of people during the COVID-19. So I believe you have lots of query. You can ask me now, or you can send the email. I think my email address is here. So when you send an email, you just mention that global webinar so that I can reply based on this one. So thanks a lot. Thanks for your patience. I think that this is the starting of the our this kind of global webinar due to the COVID-19 technology advancement, but we can do this later on as well. Thanks a lot. See you soon again.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you.